Hello students, I am Dr. Kaushik and today I am going to discuss about drugs for bipolar disorder. In the last class, we discussed about drugs of depression and we learned about major depressive disorder and persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia, and today we are going to discuss about the opposite direction of mood spectrum, that is hypomania and mania. So I think you remember that normal mood was in the middle, and if the mood starts going below, it becomes dysthymia or mild to moderate depression and severe depression. But if mood becomes elevated, it goes to hypomania zone and finally severe mania. That means the mood is very elated, very high mood for about at least 1 week. So this is mania, and like all the disorders in the psychiatry, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, that is DSM-5, has also laid down some criteria by which we can diagnose a patient of mania or bipolar disorder. So it is not just a good mood, okay. So the problem with about knowing the psychiatric disorder is that every individual feels that yes, I am a psychiatric person. Maybe I am having good mood for some days or some low mood for a few hours or few days. Am I suffering from depression or am I being manic? But it is not like that. There is certain criteria. You learned in the depression also that there was some criteria for 2 weeks of depression with low mood, and there was some criteria from which you have to be 5 or more to be categorized as major depressive episode. So similarly, a manic episode should have this criteria. Again, this is given by DSM-5 in 2013. So let's see the criteria. So a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elated, expansive or irritable mood. So the mood mostly elevated, it is expansive, and in some cases it may be irritable also, and it should persistently increased goal directed activity or energy. So the patient feels very much energetic and his activity is highly increased towards his goal, but this should remain at least 1 week and present most of the day, nearly every day. So for last 7 days at least. So there, in every definition of DSM there is a time criteria. It is not just 1 or 2 days you can classify it as a manic episode. So to be a manic episode, you must have at least 1 week of symptom for every day and nearly most time of the day. Now there are some exception of this rule also. If a patient is hospitalized due to this manic episode, then you may not require this 7-day criteria. For that 3 or 4 days may be sufficient to classify him as a manic patient. So there are some exceptions, but this is the general rule. So along with this, there must be 3 of them, 3 of the description given here. So like inflated self-esteem, decreased sleep or decreased need for sleep rather, and more talkativeness. So patient will talk more and he will have very pressurized talk. So he will give pressure whenever he feeling the sentence, and he is very easily distractible. So he will talk about something right now and a few moments later he will talk about something else. So flight of ideas, we can call it flight of ideas, and increased activity and activities with painful consequences. Now that is the more dangerous thing. So a patient in his manic episode can cause peculiar type of investment. Maybe he gave away all his money to some NGOs, or he or she may go into a relationship which may not be actually good for him or her. So this kind of thing can happen in manic episode. So these are the criteria, and you need at least 3 of them to classify a patient as in having manic episode. Now let's see a video of that, because no matter how much I talk, unless you see something, it is hard to understand what the patient feels. So let's look at the video. I will just give 1 or 2 or 3 minutes of that, but in this link you can see, you can go and watch the full video of the patient. So keep watching, and while you watch this, you try to find these criteria: this elevated mood, distractibility, decreased need for sleep, increased activity, more talkativeness are there in this patient. So you see the video and find these characteristics in him.
Hello, Mr. Smith. Hi, good to meet you. I'm Dr. Dorothy Chalk. I'll be your physician for today. Want to have a seat with me? Hi. So, who brought you in today?
My girlfriend Tasha, she's so overprotective. I don't know why she brought me in. I feel fine.
Okay. Okay. Just what were her concerns, if you remember her saying anything?
She says, I guess, that I'm acting weird, that I'm out of control.
Look at his body languages,
She's very
how his hands and heads are moving around.
Okay. Have you yourself noticed anything in your own behavior that's changed over the last while?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, what has happened?
So he changes in posture. He cannot sit for a few minutes.
I guess it's sort of an awakening of sorts. I've got
He even does not think that he has a problem. He thinks he has a power.
medical thing. It's just
So this is elevated mood
like a renaissance in my life.
and inflated
Well,
self-esteem.
I see you're very fidgety right now.
I've got a lot of stuff.
Look at his action.
I've got places to be. Look, can I go now?
Well, she brought you in today, so I'm just concerned if there's something is with your health.
And you should also learn how the doctor is behaving. So that is a very good video, I think.
I'll see if her concerns
So you should be calm.
are a bit fidgety.
You should give the patient enough time to talk. Otherwise you can miss something.
There is a very good reason. I mean, I've got all these ideas that are just they're really flying out and whatnot.
So look, there are so many ideas that is going inside him.
Well, I've started my own business. I'm going to start
And also notice the pressure of speech.
very soon. And
Whatever he is telling, he is very affirmative about it. He is very firm about it.
for a home decorating company, like not just like a design company, I guess, is sort of more what it is. Because what happens is you get all these people with, you live in your place, in your home, in your apartment, wherever you live, and or even where you work.
Look, he cannot sit even for
This place, like a revolution,
2 minutes.
and make it not just a place.
He has to do
but a
something.
place that is you.
So this is a classical manic episode. You can watch the full video
I could take it and,
in the
and make it,
link given here.
superb, just fantastic, just absolutely amazing.
I will recommend you watch the video, because before knowing any drug, first you have to know the disease. So just check on the patient later and we can move on our presentation. So the symptom you saw in this patient, it is classical mania. So acute mania. You can find from his history that he is suffering from acute mania. Now there is a spectrum of bipolar disorder, okay? Bipolar 1, bipolar 2 and cyclothymic disorder. Now what are they? A patient of bipolar 1 disorder have one manic episode. So you can see this green line. So in manic episode his mood goes up and touches mania, then it goes into depression, and finally it goes into baseline. Now after therapy it can continue to the baseline, or it can go to another level of mania. So this is bipolar 1. So bipolar 1 means mania with depression. Now any patient of mania or hypomania must go into the phase of depression. So because this is bipolar, because there are two poles, mania and depression. You can see one pole is here, one pole is here, the mania, another pole is here, the depression, and the mood fluctuates between this. If it was depression only, then the mood will be like that. So this is unipolar depression. It will continue like that, and after treatment or spontaneously it goes into this level. So this one is depression, only depression, or MDD you can say, major depressive disorder. If the mood does not go like that, if it continues in such a way for a persistent period, we call it dysthymia. I think you remember dysthymia. But here we are not talking about that. We are talking about bipolar disorder. So bipolar is mania with depression. So in bipolar depression or bipolar 1 disorder, patient has at least one episode of mania. For the hypomania, I should clear it. So for hypomania, this red one, you can follow this red one, this bipolar 1. This bipolar 1, it touches, it does not go into the manic phase, but it goes into hypomania phase. Hypomania means patient has elated mood or irritable mood, but it does not satisfy the criteria where you can say it that he is suffering from mania. So maybe elevated mood and pressure of speech. So like that, it is not as much, the symptom is not as much as mania, then we call it hypomania. Just like dysthymia, the symptom is not as much as depression, so we call it dysthymia. Here hypomania means the symptoms are not that much, you can call it mania. So this is hypomania. So hypomania plus depression, we call it bipolar 2, and bipolar 1 is mania plus depression. So green one is bipolar 1, that means mania plus depression. Bipolar 2 is this one, it means hypomania plus depression. And cyclothymia is cyclothymic disorder, that the mood does not go above the hypomania phase and does not comes below the depression dysthymia phase. So it is not touching here or not touching there. So it is within this range. So we call it cyclothymia or cyclothymic disorder. That means mood is up but not as up as mania. A mood is down but it is not as down as depression. So cyclically it goes like this. So we call it cyclothymic disorder. Now whenever a patient goes like this, cyclical mood changes, once mania, then a phase of depression, then again a phase of mania, we call it bipolar 1. And remember, if a patient have multiple manic episode within a year, say at least 4 episodes within a year, we call them rapid cycling bipolar disorder. Rapid cycling, that means the cycle is very rapid. So 4 times within a year, we call it rapid cycling bipolar disorder. Now drugs for bipolar disorder. Now before going into drugs, let me say what is the cause of bipolar disorder and what may be the other cases. Now before bipolar disorder diagnosis, you must clarify that the patient should have sufficient impairment of his own life or own physical day-to-day life. There must be severe social impairment of life. Only that case we can call it bipolar disorder. And secondly, it should not be due to any drug or an acute intoxication phase. Okay, the patient, you must rule out before classifying this patient that he is intoxicated with a drug or not. Now there are certain drugs which can precipitate the bipolar disorder, the manic phase. So that is a separate case. But if a patient is taking a drug and showing the symptom of bipolar disorder acutely, it is not bipolar disorder. But sometimes use of antidepressant drug or cocaine for some time suppose 2 or 3 months or more than that, patient gradually goes into this manic phase, then you can call it bipolar disorder. And there is a genetic predisposition also for bipolar disorder. It is seen that the monozygotic twins have more chance of, if one twin has bipolar disorder, there is 40% chance of developing bipolar disorder to other twin. So there must be some genetic predisposition, but we do not know exactly what the genes are responsible. Okay, so let's move on to the drugs. Now the most important and most effective drug is this lithium. So lithium is the most important drug, and remember in the antidepressant class we told that the SSRI or SNRI or TCS, we can say that SSRI is safer than TCA or SSRI is safer than TCA, but we cannot tell that it is more effective. But here we can surely say that lithium is most effective drug for bipolar disorder. Valproate is a very good drug, but it is not effective as lithium. Lithium is the best mood stabilizer. Sometimes we call drugs for bipolar disorder a mood stabilizer. Why? Because they stabilize the mood. They do not allow mood to go very high in the manic phase and also to very low at depression phase. So that is why we call it mood stabilizer. And there lithium is the main drug. Valproate and carbamazepine and lamotrigine, all of them are anti-epileptic drugs. You know that. You have already covered anti-epileptic drugs. So these drugs are also have property for mood stabilization. So they are also act as drugs for bipolar disorder. And atypical antipsychotic. We will learn about atypical antipsychotic and typical antipsychotics in later classes. So for now you just remember the drugs like olanzapine, risperidone, clozapine, aripiprazole. These are the antipsychotics that can be used for mood stabilization purpose, that is drugs for bipolar disorder. Remember, antidepressant drugs are not called mood stabilizer. The bipolar disorder drugs are called mood stabilizer. Okay. Now going to mechanism of action. So I think you remember from your biochemistry knowledge that how IP3-DAG pathway works. So you can see I am before going to the mechanism of action of lithium, you must remember that. So that is why I am just giving you a brief overview. So you can see here PIP2, the phosphatidylinositol 4,5-bisphosphate. That means this is the inositol ring, myoinositol, and you can see this is one phosphate, this is another phosphate, and here with this phosphate it is bind with this fatty acid moiety. So we call it phosphatidylinositol 4,5-bisphosphate. Now phospholipase C, this enzyme, what it does, it breaks the bond between them. So it breaks the bond here, and you can see we get two things, IP3, that means the inositol ring, again this yellow color, and 1 phosphate, 2 phosphate, 3 phosphate. So IP3, inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate, and left behind is diacyl glycerol. So phospholipase C do that, and you know that it is very important phenomenon in IP3-DAG pathway. This is a signaling pathway, you know. The receptor, the G protein coupled receptor, when a agonist binds with that, it activates phospholipase C, and which breaks down PIP2, which is present in the membrane, present in the plasma membrane, into IP3 and DAG. And this IP3 and DAG leads to several intracellular changes. It goes through different, it triggers some increased calcium and many other things, protein activation of protein kinase C. So basically signaling starts from there. So now look at how lithium works. Now it is seen that in some neurons there is increased activity of IP3-DAG pathway in case of bipolar disorder. So we should use a drug which inhibits this pathway, but it is not inhibited in every neuron. It is inhibited in only those neurons which are hyperactive. Remember, this is very important, because you remember from anti-epileptic class, the phenytoin or the valproate, they were acting on sodium channels in those particular neurons where there is increased activity of sodium channels. Similarly here, the IP3-DAG pathway is inhibited by lithium in not all neurons but in some particular areas. So how it acts lithium? You can see this IP3-DAG pathway here, GPCR agonist binds here, it activates PLC which converts this PIP2 into IP3. This IP3 again, now IP3 does some action, I am not going into detail of that. So, but the most important thing, how lithium is inhibiting this pathway, this inositol pathway. IP3 is converted into IMP, that is ionositol monophosphate, into by ionositol polyphosphate 1 phosphatase, IPPase, that enzyme. And again IMP is converted into inositol by inositol monophosphatase into myoinositol. This myoinositol again converted into PIP2. Now these two steps, IPPase and IMPase, are inhibited by lithium. So what will happen if patient takes lithium? There is depletion of this PIP2, that is inositol pathway, overall inositol pathway. IP3 cannot be regenerated, so ultimately the total inositol depletion will occur. So this is the most important pathway by how lithium acts. Secondly, inhibition of protein kinase C and MARX. Now this DAG, it inhibits, activates this enzyme protein kinase C, and which leads to activation of this MARX pathway. Now MARX, this is the full form, you can see here. So inhibition of these two helps, and lithium does that. And finally GSK3 pathway. Now GSK3 or glycogen synthase kinase 3, it is specially relevant in case of hippocampus area. Now in hippocampal area, the beta catenin, it is actually a transcription factor. It has some neuroprotection action, neuroprotective action, and it decreases autolysis. So if this beta catenin activity, we can increase this beta catenin activity, that will help the patient of bipolar disorder. So how we can do that? By inhibition of GSK3, which inhibits the beta catenin. So if the inhibition of beta catenin is removed, glycogen synthase kinase 3 cannot act, and by the inhibition of GSK3, the lithium helps in the patient, to the patient of bipolar disorder. So these are the most important three mechanisms by which lithium acts as mood stabilizer. Now there are some other mechanisms also. It is postulated that lithium also inhibits the 5-HT autoreceptors. So ultimately the release of serotonin is increased, and it helps in depression. So in the depression phase also lithium has some work, and in fact lithium is used in resistant depression. We do not classify lithium as antidepressant, but remember, for major resistant depression we can give lithium as adjuvant therapy. So lithium has both anti-manic property and anti-depression property. Secondly, lithium also increases BDNF level. So this is another way how lithium acts. So remember, lithium acts by three important steps. It inhibits ionositol monophosphatase, it inhibits IPPase, it inhibits protein kinase C and MARX, and it also inhibits GSK3. Now these two phenomenon is also shown by valproate. This second and third also shown by valproate, but the first one, valproate, does not inhibit ionositol monophosphatase, but valproate also acts on inositol pathway, but by different mechanism. It inhibits the synthesis of myoinositol. I will discuss after some time. So but the second and third, these two is shown by valproate. So that is how valproate acts as anti-manic. Now this is the same picture. You can see this GPCR, the PLC. There are two pathways. One is DAG pathway, DAG, and another is IP3. This IP3 conversion by IPPS and IMP, this is inhibited by lithium, and also lithium inhibits the PKC, so that marks cannot work. Again, in this picture you can see it inhibits GSK3, and so the inhibition on beta catenin is not apparent. So beta catenin can help in these factors. And the same thing, it is very simplified and it is taken from KD Tripathi. So you can see the IP3 generation, the IP from IP3 to PIP2 generation, that is inhibited by lithium. So if a question comes that write mechanism action of lithium as anti-manic drug or as a treatment of bipolar disorder, I think you can write. So you have to, if you can draw this diagram. It is very simple to draw, and you have to only write these three things. Now this was all about intracellular mechanism, and finally what happens, the lithium, if you see overall, it inhibits the dopamine receptors or the activity, actually it modulates the activity between dopamine receptors and NMDA receptors. So these are excitatory receptors, and it activates or it increases the GABA receptor activity, and overall it has some neuromodulatory action. So by this action it helps in bipolar disorder, and it also has some neuroprotective role also. So that is why it has been tried in different neurodegenerative disease also, like Huntington's chorea and some amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, in some case of Parkinson's disease also. So they have scientists are trying lithium because of its neuroprotective role. So this is the mechanism of action of lithium. So after discussion, let's move on to pharmacokinetics. Now you know that it is a simple cation and it is the lightest metal available. So it is rapidly absorbed from gut, and usually plasma concentration reach the highest point within 2 to 4 hours. It remains unbound to plasma or tissue proteins, and 95% of the dose is usually excreted by a kidney within 24 hours. Now the renal elimination is very important part of pharmacokinetics of lithium, because there are many drug interactions which is involved with this renal elimination. You will learn, I will discuss after a few slides, that how different diuretics, ACE inhibitors are related with the excretion of lithium. And lithium is a very is a drug which should be kept under very narrow therapeutic window, because if the concentration falls, then patient will become manic and the drug will not work, and if the concentration rises by just 2 folds from the target concentration, it starts giving signs of toxicity. So for the therapeutic drug monitoring, when you collect the sample, usually we collect the sample after 10 to 12 hours of last dose. So the trough level, trough level means peak and trough. Suppose you have given a drug and the concentration is increasing and then it starts falling, again you give the drug, again concentration rising, then starts falling. So this is called trough level. So we measure that the concentration in trough level, and it is not for lithium only, most of the drugs we try to measure the trough level concentration for therapeutic drug monitoring. Now what are the adverse effects? The most common adverse effect of lithium is this tremor. Tremor is the most common adverse effect, and usually it is like essential tremor, and it does not require any dose adjustment. But if the tremor is much more, that the patient feels uncomfortable, then you may require to decrease the dose, and sometimes beta blocker might help also. In a very few cases, other CNS effects like athetosis, dysarthria, aphasia, and even ataxia can occur. Leukocyte can increase. It is shown that with the lithium treatment, leukocytes are increased, and sometimes we use it for our own advantage. Like clozapine induced neutropenia, sometimes lithium is used. Lithium interferes with the release of thyroid hormone. So, if a patient takes lithium for long period, there is benign diffuse hypertrophy of thyroid gland is seen, and it is usually reversible and non-progressive, and in about 10 to 15% case can show the features of hypothyroidism, that is increased TSH level and low T4 level. So, you have just to monitor the patient, and if there is decreased thyroid function, you have to replace it with T4, and it does not require usually dose decrease of lithium. Increased urination, very very important. Usually lithium decreases the concentration power of kidney, so the kidney cannot form concentrated urine. So ultimately what happens, more and more urine is lost. It actually hampers with ADH action. Okay, so more urine is lost, and compensatory, if volume is lost, what will happen? Patient will feel thirsty and he will drink more. So polyuria and polydipsia, it is very common with lithium. Usually we do not require intervention for that, and this Epstein's anomaly, this is also very important for lithium. It is a teratogenic drug. If mother takes it during pregnancy, there is higher chance of development of congenital anomalies, especially cardiac anomaly like Epstein anomaly. Now, should we stop it? If suppose a patient is on lithium and now he has pregnancy, should we stop the drug? Now this depends upon the decision of the clinician, because if you have to think about risk benefit ratio. If the precipitation of manic episode is riskier than the drug itself, if the physician thinks that, then he should continue the drug, because all the alternative drugs like valproate or carbamazepine, all of them are teratogenic. They can try with lamotrigine, but it is not a very effective drug like lithium or valproate. So there is a trade-off. The physician should consider risk benefit ratio before stopping lithium, even though it is a teratogenic drug. So these are the common adverse effects. So you can see the mnemonic: lower leukocyte increased LI, T for tremor, H for hypothyroidism, IU for increased urination, and M for pregnancy. Try to remember it. Now, as I told earlier, the lithium must be kept under a very narrow therapeutic concentration. So usually for the maintenance therapy we require this 0.6 to 1.0 milliequivalent per liter. This is the usual maintenance therapy. If a patient goes into mania, then we may require slightly higher concentration like 1.0 to 1.2. It can reach up to 1.5. Okay, in some cases it may require 1.5 milliequivalent per liter concentration. So in Harrison, if you see, it is written 1.0 to 1.5, but if it is more than that, like more than 2.0 milliequivalent per liter, then the symptoms of toxicity appears. First, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, sedation, and fine tremor starts. If the concentration is more than that, like more than 3, then symptoms like these appear, like mental confusion, hyperreflexia, gross tremor, dysarthria. So basically mostly are neurological signs, and seizure can happen also, focal neurological sign can happen, and if it concentration even goes higher, like more than 4, so coma or death can happen even. So this is a very you have to keep the concentration below 1.5. You must keep the concentration below 1.5, and it also should be above 0.6, and taken into consideration that the concentration of lithium greatly varies with an individual. So its age, with the increasing age or with the different drugs the patient is taking with different comorbidities, the concentration of lithium can change, because the elimination can change. Elimination of lithium via kidney can change, and increased level of lithium can happen inside the body. So that is the thing you have to remember when a patient in the lithium therapy. So that comes into this drug interaction slide. Now I think you have already learned about this particular interaction, this lithium and thiazide. Lithium and thiazide, I think you know about that. So what happens if a patient is on any diuretic, especially loop diuretic or thiazide diuretic? Thiazide is the most important culprit. So what will happen? This thiazide diuretic, they causes decreased sodium and water retention. So sodium loss basically. What body tries to do whenever it senses that sodium is it is losing sodium, it try to increase sodium reabsorption via proximal convoluted tubule. Now this, as soon as it tries increased absorption via PCT, it also absorbs lithium along with sodium, because both of them are monovalent, both of them are cation, small cation. So body tries to increase sodium concentration, and along with sodium it also draws lithium. So finally what happens? Lithium elimination via kidney is decreased. So be very careful whenever you are giving lithium to a patient who is on diuretics. The same thing also applies for ACE inhibitors, especially lisinopril. Lisinopril has shown some drug-drug interactions with lithium, and this NSAIDs also. NSAIDs, by decreasing renal perfusion, it increases lithium concentration. These are mainly elimination related drug-drug interactions. Iodide, along with iodide, what happens? I have already told you that lithium decreases the thyroid release, and iodide does the same. So if you give iodide along with lithium, there may be decreased thyroid function. Along with antidepressants, as lithium has some serotonergic, pro-serotonergic like property, like it decreases serotonergic autoreceptor, it inhibits serotonergic autoreceptor and increase serotonin level. So with SSRI it can cause, a very rare, but it can cause serotonin syndrome. And finally with carbamazepine increases the CNS toxicity of lithium, because carbamazepine also has multiple CNS adverse effects like ataxia. So if you combine them together, it decreases the CNS adverse effects incidence is much more. So the most important, you remember again, lithium and thiazide. Now use of lithium. Now lithium is mostly used for acute mania and prophylaxis of bipolar disorder. This is the most common use of lithium. In some cases we can use it for resistant major depression. Scientists have tried it for different neurodegenerative diseases, but these are not indicated, but this you can say an off-label indication. And also the neutropenia is another off-label indication, especially the clozapine induced. And clozapine is also used in case of as mood stabilizer. It is actually an antipsychotic, atypical antipsychotic, but it has some mood stabilizing property. So if a patient with clozapine, one of the most important adverse effect of clozapine is neutropenia. So clozapine induced neutropenia, you can give lithium. Now how this acute mania or bipolar disorder, how lithium is used, I am going to discuss when at the last part of my discussion, when other drugs is already discussed. So next drug is valproic acid or divalproic sodium. We use mainly divalproic sodium, is basically like valproic acid. So it is anti-epileptic and most widely used anti-manic drugs. Now, lithium is most effective, but due to its narrow therapeutic index, we mostly use valproic acid. The mechanism of action is mainly via inhibition of inositol pathway, that is myoinositol 1-phosphate synthase. This enzyme, it actually catalyzes the conversion of G6P, that is glucose 6-phosphate, into 1-myoinositol 1-phosphate. So ultimately myoinositol synthesis is inhibited by valproic acid. It has also two other pathway. I told you, it also inhibits the GSK3 pathway, it also inhibits the PKC and MAX protein. So these are the mechanism by which valproic acid acts as mood stabilizer. But remember, in acute mania, lithium is more effective than valproic acid. Okay, but valproic acid is the drug of choice when the patient is rapid cycling disorder. Patient is rapid cycling, suffering from rapid cycle, means more than 4 manic episode per year. So that is rapid cycling. In those patients we use valproic acid. The side effects you know already: GI upset, sedation, increased weight, metabolic liver changes, and for female it can precipitate or aggravate PCOD, so and possible loss of hair. So these are the adverse effects, and it is also an enzyme inhibitor, so it has multiple drug-drug interactions also. So you have to be careful again while using valproate. Carbamazepine is a second line drug. We do not use it as first line drug only if the lithium or valproate is contraindicated or it is not giving sufficient therapeutic goal. Only then we go for carbamazepine. It is an enzyme inducer, so remember about drug interactions. And the ataxia, it can cause ataxia, that is a problem, its neurologic adverse effects. So that is why we do not use carbamazepine unless we must. Lamotrigine is not used in acute mania, it is only used in case of bipolar disorder maintenance therapy. And when it is used with valproate, you require to decrease its dose by 50% because valproate is enzyme inhibitor. Lamotrigine is usually safe drug, but a few patients can show rash and Stevens-Johnson syndrome. The Stevens-Johnson syndrome is also very important for carbamazepine also. So you have to remember that a few patients can suffer from Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is a very bad adverse drug reaction. So and finally atypical antipsychotics. Now about antipsychotics, there are two types of antipsychotics: typical or classical antipsychotic and atypical. The typical antipsychotics works by D2 receptor blockade, and atypical antipsychotics have multiple actions. To some extent they might have D2 blocking property, but they works by different mechanism, and we will discuss it in the next class very thoroughly. The clozapine, risperidone and olanzapine, these three drugs are option. There are some other drugs can also be used like quetiapine and aripiprazole. Those are all atypical antipsychotics. And when we use it, suppose a patient has come with acute mania, like the patient we saw in that video. Now if you start only lithium, it might take a few days, like 7 days or maybe more to act. So what we do, if the physician think they can start atypical antipsychotic along with lithium, and as the symptoms goes away, they gradually taper off the atypical antipsychotic. They may continue atypical antipsychotic, but the usual norm is to try to treat the patient with lithium and valproate. And if it is not, the valproate or lithium is contraindicated, then we go for, or not giving the sufficient therapeutic result, then we go for atypical antipsychotic for prolonged period. But usually we use it for first few days, and as first few days means maybe 4 to 8 weeks, and after some time if the patient's mania phase is gone, patient's mood is stabilized into euthymic zone, we gradually taper off atypical antipsychotics. And sometimes we may require benzodiazepines also, like clonazepam or diazepam, in those acute manic phase to calm down the patient. So this is the usual therapeutic target. So a patient when comes with acute mania, you start with atypical antipsychotic and lithium. If you think that patient is it's difficult to control or may require hospitalization, then gradually as the patient stabilizes, taper off antipsychotic, continue the patient, keep the patient on lithium or valproate. For elderly individual whose kidney function usually is not that good, lithium therapy is usually avoided in those patients. In those patients we usually use anti-epileptics like valproate or carbamazepine, usually valproate. So elderly individual, drug of choice is not lithium, and for acute manic phase, drug of choice is atypical antipsychotic along with lithium or valproate. So this was all about the management strategy. So we learned about a mood disorder which has two poles, one mania, second depression, and the patients need to be treated to avoid suicidal tendency, which they can do, they may frequently do. It is very common in bipolar disorder that patients attempt suicide. So for that we have to treat the patient very aggressively with lithium, atypical antipsychotic, valproate or carbamazepine, and in some cases lamotrigine may be required also. Then we learn how lithium works. Lithium works by three mechanisms: inhibition of inositol pathway by inositol monophosphatase inhibition and IPPase inhibition. Second, it inhibits phosphokinase, protein kinase C and MARX pathway. Third, it inhibits GSK3 pathway. We learned about the therapeutic drug monitoring that is required for lithium, because increasing concentration of lithium beyond 2 can precipitate acute lithium toxicity, and it must be treated with dialysis. So this was all about bipolar disorder. Hope you enjoyed the class. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you.